during this entire rally, the biggest winners in this entire rallies were semiconductors, the Mag 7, followed by the NASDAQ triple Qs, right? Which is all heavily weighted in those Mag 7 stocks, and they have outperformed to a large degree here relative to the S&P index itself. But here's what you need to know before the bell this morning. Yesterday, the market turned positive for the year. So if you'd been Rip Van Winkle and went to sleep in January, came back and opened your account yesterday, account was flat for the year. You didn't see any of this big decline for the markets, but markets actually positive for the year as of yesterday, just barely. We're up 0.8%, but we are positive for the year. So, that's at least saying something. Importantly, though, we have cleared all these major levels of resistance that we talked about yesterday. So that really doesn't leave a lot of overhead resistance for the markets to get back up to all-time highs. And I know that seems like a stretch right now for markets, and at least if you've been, kind of betting against this market a bit in a way, or been worried about, hey, this is, we're finally going to have this big correction. The market's really starting to defy a lot of that. Again, every kind of resistance level has given way to what's happening underneath the surface. And here, let's talk about that, because that's the big driver here. You have professional investors that are very, very far behind in terms of allocations. They got very negative back here in early, kind of really, late March, early April. They started getting very, very negative on positioning in the markets. And so they're very underweight equities. We saw them selling a lot of the Mag 7. There was a lot of talk about, the Mag 7's dead. You don't want to own them. They're overvalued, et cetera, so forth and so on. So there was a lot, and professionals are all selling them. The hedge funds are selling all their Mag 7 stocks. Get out now, right? That was the big story. And now, unfortunately, they are very underweight those areas. And the one big problem with being underweight the Mag 7 in particular is because of their position weighting that they have in passive indexes. So when retail investors started coming back into the markets here and started buying a lot of S&P index funds, the QQQs, the NASDAQ funds, the mega cap growth index funds, those all have big weightings of those Mag 7 stocks. So all those dollars flow right back into those equities. And now that those prices for stocks like Apple and Microsoft, Palantir, NVIDIA yesterday, NVIDIA and Palantir have had two fantastic days in a row. As those prices rise, those professional managers are now having to buy those stocks, trying to cover their short positions, buy those stocks. So all of a sudden now you're getting a lot more money flows coming back into the Mag 7. And in fact, during this entire rally, the biggest winners in this entire rallies were semiconductors, the Mag 7, followed by the NASDAQ triple Qs, right? Which is all heavily weighted in those Mag 7 stocks, and they have outperformed to a large degree here relative to the S&P index itself. But the important part about this is, again, you have in those big mega cap companies, you've got a lot of negative professional sentiment, negative underweights in those professional allocations. Those are having to play catch up now. Big short positions on a lot of these on the markets, as well as a lot of these stocks, that's having to get covered. And these are the companies that are buying back their shares. And there's been a very strong surge in buybacks over the course of the last 4 weeks. So since earnings season has ended, we've seen about a 12% jump in buybacks, going from a negative 10% decline. So you've had a very, very large reversal in those corporate buybacks. That's a lot of money flows into those stocks, and that's been driving a lot of that group of stocks higher. And again, that will fade here. Markets, again, we're back to very, very overbought conditions of both momentum and relative strength. You're going to get some consolidation or a pullback here. But again, as long as we can maintain this kind of recent support level that we've got in the markets are going to try to work their way higher here, at least over the rest of this month. So again, that's what you need to know before the bell this morning.